Hi, Laura and Matthew. Thank you so much for joining us today. And it's so great to meet you guys. My name is Amalia, and I am a sophomore in high school. My pronouns are she, her.
Hey y'all, I'm Arwen. My pronouns are they, them, or she, her, and I'm a senior. And Amalia and I are part of the Steppenwolf Young Adult Council.
And we are also teen curators for Steppenwolf's young adult spring production of a Homewood Howls, which means that we're going to build a curriculum and the engagement around the show and figure out the ways that it will speak to teens like ourselves. And of course, one of the things we wanted to do was interview the both of you guys because you are truly one of the most important parts of this show.
So Laura and Matthew, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourselves with your names, pronouns, and what roles you have in the creation of a Homewood House?
Sure. So, hi, I'm Laura Alcalá Baker. I go by she, they pronouns, and I am the director.
I'm Matthew Paul Olmos. I'm the playwright, he, him pronouns. And yeah, I'm excited to talk to you all.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to speak with you. As you may know, this is an interview that will be used in our study guide for Homewood Howls. So every student and teacher coming to see this show have access to these materials. This guide includes lesson plans, engagement activities, context, and behind the scenes content like this interview.
So we're gonna just fire it off with a few questions about your artistic backgrounds, the process of creating a Homewood Howls, and especially your hopes for your teen audiences. But we want this to feel super fluid. So just feel free to use our questions as a jumping off place and just talk. So to start off, could you both tell us a little bit about yourselves as artists and also what tied you to this specific story?
Matt, you first, you first.
Sure. Let's see, as an artist, I grew up not very connected to art at all. My family doesn't really engage in that sort of stuff. So I kind of got interested in writing kind of almost in secret. I would sort of like on my own, like, decipher lyrics to songs that I like, before the internet. Um, and I would write poems and things and write short stories. And even when I went to college, like I would start taking like creative writing courses, like almost in secret, not telling my family because they kind of wouldn't be too cool with me taking something that wasn't like towards a career, or what they thought could be a career. Um, and then I think I'd run out of all the creative writing courses. And so I took an intro to playwriting course. I'd never been to a play in my life. I kind of knew what the theater was, but not really. It was kind of like a vague, like, I know there's plays and things, but I didn't know what that really meant. But I don't, for whatever reason, pretty quickly, like in a few weeks, my playwriting teacher pulled me aside and was like, I think you have a knack for this. You should consider it. And I was like, oh, wow. So I started watching plays and reading plays and being like, oh, okay, I guess maybe I could do this. And I sort of just kept writing. I went to grad school for writing. I spent most of my career in New York being a playwright. And it always feels weird for me because I feel like an outsider still in theater because I just didn't have the background for it. And I just always felt people were so like, I grew up doing musicals since I was 5 years old and stuff. And I was always like, I didn't even know that stages existed when I was 5 years old. Um, and then, when I was in grad school, actually, I was in New York. And I'd always written plays that were very sort of language and sort of like very lyrical and poetic. And then I went to see this documentary called Bowling for Columbine when I was maybe my first year of grad school. And I remember I left the theater and I walked to a bookstore across town and I bought a book called Nickel and Dimed about trying to get by in America on minimum wage, which you can't really do. And I kind of made a decision that night to only write plays that had some sort of social value, some sort of discussion about the world we live in and the injustice of it. And ever since then I've just been writing stories that have to do with things like that, so which kind of connects to this play, which is very much in that vein of like things that we've injustices that sort of happened, particularly with marginalized communities. And so it's been just a career of focusing on that stuff, focus on stories like that, communities like that, and which kind of brings us to this play here.
Yeah, and then Laura, if you would also tell us your story.
Sure. So I grew up in a military family. We moved around a lot, Air Force. My dad is from Indiana. My mom is from Guadalajara and immigrated here when she was young. And so I grew up in a mixed household that was kind of, stationed all over the place. And so it's a place where you're constantly making new friends, trying to make new community, trying to find the space to be. And there was often community centers, and those had sort of a theater program inside of them that were on base. And I just found from there, like so many people, I found acting, and I was like, oh, this is just like a way to be part of a community that is kind of consistent in my life. But it became really clear that acting was not my thing. And it was fun, but it was just like I was always thinking about the big picture and the story, and I could feel myself like wanting to explore all the pieces that made it possible. And that happened really young. I must have been 10. But there wasn't a way for a 10-year-old to become a director. And so trying to find your way to like, how do you become a person who leads that room was part of the journey. Like when I was 15, I started teaching theater at the local theater that was in my town in Fayetteville. And I started like ran summer camps and just tried to be in a leadership position so that I could eventually become a director. And I got my degree from Elon University in acting, my BFA in acting, and in theatrical, my BA in theatrical design, because I wanted to know how to talk to both sides of the table. So if I know how actors think and talk, and I know their process, and I know how designers think and talk, maybe I can marry those two things. And from there, it was the journey of I was in California for a while, and then I was back in North Carolina for a while, and in Chicago. And making your way as an artist, as I'm sure you can imagine, is tough living. It is a lot of minimum wage. It is a lot of like split your time between the work that sustains you and what sustains your soul. So I was back and forth in so many jobs and just trying to get, I was working in front of house for a theater and trying to get tickets that way, right? Because you get free tickets if you run the box office. And so I was trying to find my way again into these spaces. And I always feel like I've been trying to like scratch my way through doors and meet the right people because I just didn't have those connections and I didn't know how to gain them. So it's just this persistence. And through that, I really discovered that the stories that most resonated with me were Mexican American stories. And a lot of that is about the erasure that happened in my own family by the fault of no one, right? By the fault of the American systems at play that try to squish down parts of your culture in order for it to become this part of the homogeny. And so I really thought about what was lost in that, like language, food, family, community. And so I re-engaged with that part of myself and my life, and that meant exploring what community meant in theater in this space. And luckily Chicago has a huge Latino community in the arts, and from then on it was about finding those stories, directing those stories about the missing and marginalized canon, like what's been buried beneath and how can I uproot that and be a part of creating the new American canon.
Amazing. I love that. Our next question is, although this play explores events taking place in the past, what about the story do you find to be relevant today?
I mean, for me, as someone who does a lot of stories of things that are kind of like, I'll take a historic event and sort of be inspired by it and sort of tell my own version of it, or sort of lift it off and make it more like a heightened version of that event. What I'm always surprised at, when I get into these research mode and really like looking at these historical events that I'd read about or found out about, whatever it is, it's crazy because every time I do it, you'll just see parallels of that same stuff happening now, the same stuff happening in different places, same stuff happening all the time. And just, we hear that sort of cliche that history is cyclical, but it confounds me so many times because I'm like, oh my God, this was such an uproar, there's such an injustice that everyone realized was an injustice. And yet we're doing the exact same thing today. So right now, because of this play, I'm constantly noticing, when people are being uprooted, whether their businesses or their houses, whatever it might be, when sort of usually capitalism, but the money or progress are sort of pushing people aside. I notice it more just because I've dealt with this play for so much. So for me, it's always just so mind-boggling actually that we kind of go through these cycles as humans where we sort of like, we do this and we realize how bad that was, and then we do it sort of again in a different form, and we do it again a little bit later in a different form. So to me, it's sad, but like even also other cities I take this play to, they all have stories very similar. They want to just talk about like, oh, something very similar happened here in our community. And so it's beautiful because we're connecting on the play, but it's also for me sort of heartbreaking because I'm like, oh wow, this happens so often in every place, and it doesn't seem to get old.
Yeah, I mean, we keep repeating history, repeating the same mistakes, and there's so many pieces at play that make that possible. But yeah, capitalism and sort of power in a big way that people who hold power want to retain it. In order to retain it, there's this perception that if you give others any ground, you will lose ground. And so literal ground in this space, in this play. And we just see it time and time again. It's exhausting. It's exhausting to watch. But I think that once people see it, whether it was in their own community or whether it was something that they then researched and delved into further, it's really hard to not see. Just like Matt was saying, is that like you start seeing those echoes everywhere. And in the play, Matt has written his own echoes. There are parts of the play that start to like reverberate from one person and place to another, and you really do see how this applies to so many. And I call that like the echoes and the parallels rather than universality, because that puts a blanket sort of statement on it, whereas there are these things that are generationally getting passed through, which is like both the resilience and the mistakes of it all, like the pain of it all that stuff is getting passed through humanity over and over and over again. And we're seeing that in really particular communities, particularly Black and brown communities in America, but all over the world. And I think that once you see it, you can't unsee it.
It was a beautiful way of saying it. Thank you, both of you. Then changing gears a little bit and building the curriculum for Homewood Howls, we talked a lot about how this play explores a balance of resistance and persistence. And how do you think that resistance is more about fighting the people that you hate or protecting the people that you love? And if so, what gives you both the strength to resist?
I got one. Every play that I want to be a part of, I always call them heart plays. Those are the ones that I read and I can feel so deeply in my heart, because I think everything is born out of love. It's the only reason worth living. It's the only reason. I just want to love and laugh my whole time. Oh God, love and laugh. Excuse me. But you know what I mean? I just want to like spend my days laughing and enjoy. And there are things that are in the way of that. But nothing can stop my love. Nothing can stop that from emanating out. I believe myself and I believe each of us to be at the center of our little world of love. And so the hate of it all, though there is fury in me, though there is fire in me, I cannot succumb to that, because the warmth of it is going to be stronger at the end of the day. And that is what I'm seeking in plays, and that's what's so profoundly in what Matt's built.
Yeah, I think, very similar. I think of like a resistance and like, I always think about, whatever form of resistance, whether it's someone standing outside like a government office or outside a corporation's office, or whether it's boycotting something. I always feel like, there's many forms of, whether it's, singing, against something, but there's always something about like, for whatever reason someone's doing it, like there's always, I think, some hope of like, there's hope of there's a better version of the world, there's a better version of ourselves, there's a better version of my day-to-day that can be possibly gotten to, if we do certain things. And I think one of the things that, or at least the reasons that I was drawn to art, I think originally is because when I watch a film or a play or read a book or whatever it might be, I get some sort of hope of like, oh wow, like they're reflecting back the world we live in, and they're showing me the beauty that exists in it. And I'm like, oh, I want to like be a part of that more. I want to like be a part of making that happen more. So like, I think of resistance always as being rooted in this idea of hope, of being aware that this world can be a little bit better, even if it's just a little bit here, a little bit there, all over the place, or all over the world, in different countries, in different cities, in different communities, wherever it is the person lives, but that just that ideal of being like, oh, this can be a little bit better, that keeps someone, inspire someone, I think, to try and do something about it, to be like, oh, I do want to get up and go do this thing, or I don't want to give money to this corporation, because I think that even that tiny little thing might not change the world immediately, but it will have changed the dial a little bit, and like we can get a little bit closer to something that's possible. And I think I love going there all the time, because I love just other artists reflecting back and being like, oh wow, I've never thought about the beauty that you just showed me before. Now I see it. And I want to hold that with me a little bit, and go out in the world with that, inside me, So I think resistance often is, to me anyway, tied to hope.
Again, so beautiful. Oh my gosh. For both of you, what do you hope audience members of all ages, adults, and the many students attending our student matinees take away from this show?
I get this question a lot, like, because people are like, what do you want people to feel, or to do, or to, like, what do you want that to be when people leave? And it's something that, like, it's so hard to answer, because you are doing your work in you're doing what you're doing in service of the story, and service of the people, on the characters on the stage, and of the story that the playwright has built. And you're doing it to kind of fill the room with a resonance, right? Like, I want the audience to find something that resonates with them, and let that reverberate beyond the room. I want to make an impact, and that impact is about what's on the page and then makes it to the stage. And much like we've already said, the love, the hope, the people, the relationships, I can't dictate what will spur people into action, or break their hearts, or it's such a personal experience, right? We're having a personal experience in a collective room. So it's really special in that way. But I actually don't want to, like, dictate what I want of them. It's not of me to want from them. Um, I want I want to do our work in order to then find a resonance that they can take out into the world with them.
Yeah, I think very similarly. Like, my hope is that, while the audience is watching the play, that something about the storytelling, the way it's being, the quality but that's being presented, and the wonderful theater, like, that they open up a little bit, and just, they kind of can get to release their day a little bit, and get to, like, think about some of the ideas in the play, and, like, what they do with that afterward, again, like, Laura was saying, is not really our job, I guess, necessarily. But, like, I always like this idea that, like, if someone just takes the time and is finds themselves thinking about, what home means to them, or what home might mean to other people, or what resistance means to them, or what it might mean to other people, like, just the time spent actually just considering it, taking some time to almost take out one of your beliefs, and, like, consider it for a little bit, even if you put it back in the exact same spot, you at least took some time to consider some things and think about them for a little while, when you were in the dark, and then you left the theater. And I think you're, at least in my hope, is that you are a changed person in some little way, maybe a larger way for some, smaller for others, but, like, something about the openness. Like, I love going to theater and just being like, oh wow, I went somewhere for a little while. I might go back about my day afterwards, but I spent some time considering something that the artist put forward, whether it's about love or loss, whatever it might be. Like, I love just that idea of, like, oh, they brought me somewhere for a little while, and I got to spend time somewhere and think about things I think or don't think about. So I want that openness in the theater.
And on that note, I think that's about all the time we have, but thank you so, so much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us, and I know I got a lot out of this conversation, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you again so much. It was really incredible to get to talk to you guys and get your such beautiful insights about this story. And also the inside perspectives from two of the most important people in this production. As well as just getting to know you better. I know everyone in the study guide is going to be super stoked to hear about this. And so thank you.
Thank you.